And welcome to Roadside Notes. I'm Christopher, the Route 66 chaplain, and these are the readings from the Faith and Good Courage Journal found at faithandgoodcourage.com. These are stories from and for the road, a little grace for the miles ahead, and reminders that hope still travels with us. This journal, your own devotional, is from my entry on April 2nd, 2026. Your own devotional is not something I set out to write. It wasn't a strategy or a brand plan. It was a sentence spoken in the front seat of my truck while Mary and I were driving to a wedding in San Diego. Now, Mary had just finished listening to an episode of the podcast. The freeway stretched out ahead of us. The desert air of creosote bloom started to drift through the cracked window. And I asked her what she thought. You know, the way you would do, half expecting critique and also half hoping for encouragement. She didn't talk about the production quality. She didn't analyze the structure of the story. She didn't mention downloads or reach. She said, "I love your series. It's your own devotional, and it's like you're just sharing it with others." That sentence settled into me deeper than any metric I could ever see. I realized in that moment that I hadn't been trying to build a show. I'd been living something. The stories from the diners, the desert highways, quiet conversations, and unexpected grace weren't content pieces. They were personal reflections that had simply overflowed into words. Your own devotional doesn't have to look like a leather-bound journal on a bedside table. Sometimes it looks like a microphone in a small office. Sometimes it looks like a note tucked under a sugar dispenser. Sometimes it looks like listening to a stranger at a counter when the room is too loud for anyone to notice her pain. I've never wanted to preach louder. I've wanted to live kinder. I've never wanted to convince people. I've wanted to encourage them. The difference matters. When Mary said those words, she named something I hadn't fully understood yet. This wasn't performance. It was practice. It was faith worked out in ordinary places, then shared honestly. There's pressure in the world to make everything polished, to present certainty instead of process, to offer answers instead of reflection. But your own devotional doesn't require perfection. It requires sincerity. Some of my most meaningful moments haven't happened on stages. They've happened in booths, in cars, on long stretches of road where the only sound is tires humming against asphalt. That's where faith feels real to me. Not abstract, not theatrical, but lived. The stories I share are not heroic. They're human. They're about working up the nerve to say hello, about choosing to listen instead of fix. It's about recognizing that sometimes God hands you ingredients instead of a finished cake. Mary's words reminded me that devotion isn't to be hidden. It isn't meant to stay private or out of fear because it's too small or too ordinary. If it's true, it's worth sharing. We sometimes assume devotion belongs to the clergy, theologians, or those with formal titles. But what if devotion is simply attention paid to the sacred in everyday life? What if it's noticing grace in traffic, kindness in diners, humility on glass skywalks 4,000 feet above the canyon floor? Your own devotional might not look like mine. It might unfold in a classroom, a hospital hallway, a workshop, or at a kitchen table. But if it's honest, it matters. I didn't realize I was building something cohesive. I was telling the truth about what I was learning. Mary heard the thread before I did. She saw the pattern in the miles. And maybe that's the quiet gift to community. Sometimes someone else names the calling before you do. In my roadside reflection, maybe you've been waiting for permission to share what you've been learning. Maybe you think your reflections are too simple, too personal, too unfinished. But your own devotional doesn't have to be impressive to be impactful. It just has to be real. The world doesn't need louder voices as much as it needs honest ones. If something has shaped you, helped you, steadied you, don't keep it locked away. How will they know hope is possible unless someone tells them? You've lived faith, imperfect and unfolding. That might be exactly what someone else needs, and they need to hear it today. Travel well, my friends. Have faith and good courage.